Well, we've certainly kept the Queen waiting long enough. Time to see just how different she is compared to AM2R. Well, she's still even more massive than the T-Rex, though I'm afraid that the robot stole the spot of the largest boss in the game. Nothing major, just something that kinda makes me chuckle just before the pain starts. Okay, no clue why I thought we could just stand on her head like that when she did that. I don't seem to be hurting her at all at the moment. Whereas she's got attacks that outright deny me the ability to walk on the ground or latch onto the ceiling. Ah, so we need to shoot into her mouth at specific angles. Annoying. But her head was always a weak spot anyway, which was itself a bit awkward, since most of her attacks come from said head. I don't recall having to be quite so precise when shooting into her mouth in the previous game, and yes, I know that out of context, wording it that way is a bit iffy. Speaking of iffy, the music track at the moment just does not work for me at all. I'm pretty sure AM2R had a better track for this fight. Little hard to shoot back at her when we can only shoot when on the ground and she's denied us the use of the ground at the moment. And to no one's great surprise, our first attempt against her was a complete slaughter against us. Let's just cut away a good number of the fail attempts against her and see what the longest take looks like. It looks like I still need to figure out how to dodge that headbutt. Okay, so we can avoid it if we jump to the upper corner there. That's better than just needing to tank some of these very hard hits that outright remove more than a tank's worth of health. Going to be a bit annoying, the number of limited times we can damage the bitch here, but nothing we can really do about that in this fight. Well, at least the attacks she's got for the first stage are rather easy to memorize and dodge. Not sure what the purple rings around her head when she raised that bite mean. At the very least, this stage of the fight feels a little bit too early to use the super bomb in. And it doesn't have that yellow flash that I typically associate with the counter, so yeah, don't think I should even try against that attack. Well, seems we've gotten through one stage of the fight so far. And the next stage apparently involves a lot of green balls that our beams completely ignore, but are probably very damaging to us. And apparently the laser is denying us more ground. Definitely a more complicated fight than the original Queen. But oddly enough, I'm disappointed we don't have to worry about the bloody thing smashing through walls in order to try killing us. That was a nice way to show we were advancing through the various stages of the fight back in AM2R, but this fight? It is just going to stay in the same cramped area. Different attack pattern, but still pretty repetitive at this stage. It's just that one of those attacks are very annoying to dodge, which is good motivation for me to turn on the lightning armor. Probably should have turned it on earlier, but then we managed to get through all the other boss fights in this game with minimal use of the armor. It's just one of those things that I don't typically use, unless I absolutely have to. She's definitely a damage sponge, no mistake about that. Probably should have fired more missiles instead of just relying on the ice beam for most of this fight if she's gonna be this bloody durable. Also a bit confused that the spider ball apparently doesn't stop her from trying to blow us against a wall. Does it even weaken the wind pushing against us to give us more of a chance to move to the other side, or would I have moved faster if I didn't have it? Dear God, she's essentially forcing us to trade blows with her, and regardless of how durable we are, I severely doubt we're gonna get the job done against this bitch that way. Speaking of bitchin', I know this is entirely preference-based instead of an outright flaw in the game designer's part, but come on! There was a more visual sign that we were making progress back in AM2R in the original game, as the Queen forced us from one room to the next, as we advance through the various stages of the fight. Sure, we've been going through one stage of the fight so far, and the enemy has certainly changed up her attack moves, making it still pretty challenging, but still, it's pretty clear this one chamber is going to house the entire fight. A chamber that seems to be the exact same design, and possibly size, as the one we'd fight against a T-Rex in, which somehow feels dull, considering the fact that this is supposed to be the final boss. Right, managed to avoid taking damage that time from that attack, though that what's left of a relief is the fact that my odd refusal did not use super missiles, and I mostly use the ice beam against this monster seems to be dragging things out to the point that it's probably more excruciating than it needs to be. At least we're advancing to the next stage of the fight now. So we don't get Aeon energy back, but we do get missiles and some health. Considering the drawn-out nature of this slugging match, I have the distinct feeling that's not gonna go well for me at all. I know I keep saying this, but I'd really appreciate it if this game would give the enemy some bloody health bars. You've gotta be kidding me. How the hell am I supposed to avoid getting damaged by that? Is there really supposed to be some way to get from the floor to the ceiling in order to avoid this attack? And if so, just how are we supposed to avoid the green balls on the way up? Bit embarrassing that I got killed by an attack we've dodged plenty of times before that, but you want to know what's even more embarrassing? I gave in and used a cheat code to be temporarily invulnerable for just this fight so we can just get it over with. Sure, that means us taking down the Metroid Queen here in this particular remake is gonna mean absolutely nothing, since it's as far from a clean win as possible. But there are several things in this fight that just got on my nerves to such a degree that I essentially gave up on it like I did with Mother Brain in Zero Mission. The build-up to this boss felt superior in the original and AM2R, whereas in this game it's just treated as essentially just one final threat instead of something that you actually build up to. There's no indicator from what I can see for how much damage you've managed to accomplish, so if you just keep firing rapidly, you're just hoping for the best. There's also the fact that one of the attacks we can do to do massive damage to the Queen is to spider ball into the wall on the right, and then use a super bomb to fling us right into her skull hard as she's doing something else that's kind of specific. I'm sorry, but I outright had to learn that by checking online, not through anything the game itself conveyed to us. That's certainly quite a load of bullshit. And then there's the fact that, much like the T-Rex in this same game, there's just something about how the damn thing fights that doesn't feel all that visually appealing to me. Which is not helped by the fact that the original and AM2R made fighting this thing into as big of a visual spectacle as the game engine could allow for. From the damn thing smashing walls to try to deal with us, to the fact that we finished it with a super bomb inside of its gut. But here, we don't get a finish of a super bomb inside the bloody thing's stomach. That's just what we would get to see if we countered the thing when it does just one attack that can specifically be countered that way. Which means you can both end up super bombing the Queen in the gut multiple times in this game, and it wouldn't be an absolute guarantee that it would be the final blow, like the other versions of this same experience. Again, in terms of difficulty and the skills the player needs to show this version of the fight, this is indeed superior to the original in AM2R in a lot of categories. But in terms of presentation and atmosphere, I'm afraid the Queen is severely lacking. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad that both AM2R and this remake exist. It's not that I favor one over the other to that kind of major degree. But in terms of what I came here to enjoy, AM2R scratched more of the things I was itching for from a Metroid game. I really feel guilty for feeling that way, especially considering the clear amount of effort that Nintendo put into this remake. Even with all the issues with this game that I have, and the fact that I got sick of this one not scratching some of those itches enough to outright cheat in this supposedly very major fight, I can respect the work they put into it and the fact that they tried to innovate in several different categories. Apparently I managed to kill her while I was talking there. That arguably would have felt more awesome if I'd won that fight clean without any cheat codes at all, but even on that drawn-out second try that lasted about 7 minutes, I found myself kinda yawning instead of feeling invested in the tough fight. Again, the Queen felt like an ominous, constant presence in AM2R, but here, she wasn't much of a presence until we were practically on top of her. Samus, I'd hate to be the one to tell you this, but if you're planning on killing that last one, you've got the wrong type of beam ready at the moment. Gotta admit, I like the idea of Samus thinking about killing this one just like all the rest, but hesitating because it wasn't being hostile like the others. Anyway, now that we've got the baby, it's time for us to start moving back towards the ship. I'm looking at the raw footage now, and wow, there's only just enough footage left that we're gonna have one more clip to finish this game off after this one. Going to turn off invincibility at the first opportunity, though, despite the fact that whatever comes after the Queen is going to be incredibly short, a lot shorter than I was expecting. I'm still looking forward to it, to a degree. Wonder if I'd be so harsh on this game if I hadn't done AM2R just before it and already firmed up some details on how things would go on this planet for Samus. Or maybe I would have complained about numerous things in this game anyway. Hard to say. At the very least, considering the number of upgrades we needed the baby Metroid to grab, you'd think there'd have been an extra hour or two of gameplay after we killed the Queen that we might want to prep for. But instead, apparently it's one final boss fight just as we're about to leave. And, yeah. Going off to search for all the other upgrades would feel like a waste of time if we're just doing one boss fight, regardless of what we're fighting against. I think I'm gonna end this clip just before that boss fight, just so I don't have to split things up in the middle of a fight. Good, invincibility is off now. Again, killing the Queen that way wasn't the honorable thing, and technically it wasn't as frustrating to deal with as Mother Brain back in Zero Mission. But one of the things that is important for a player going through a game is, are you having fun? Again, it's not that the Queen was outright horrible or that this game is bad. I just didn't feel like I was having fun in that moment when it should have been one of the most awesome parts of this game. I took how the various Metroids across this game were improved overall, made assumptions for how it would feel when we got to the final boss of the story, and my own imagination made it feel more epic than it actually ended up being when we actually reached it. Sure, part of those overly high expectations were due to what we'd seen in AM2R, but part of it was also the fact that I'd watched footage from the original Metroid 2. Well, I can't find it in me to play a Metroid game that doesn't have a map like the original and 2. There's nothing really stopping me from watching it myself. Again, this game added a lot that I absolutely enjoyed, and I'm looking forward to seeing what this team can pull off when making Metroid Dread, where they have a lot more freedom to do their own thing rather than going through some other team's story beats with better tech. Of course, it probably didn't help that said team wanted to do a remake of Metroid Fusion instead, and were told, not a terrible idea, but we'd actually prefer a remake of Metroid 2, not 4. Understandable on Nintendo's part, considering 2 was rather ambitious, but the series didn't really hit its stride until the third game. They'd already made a remake of the first game for the Game Boy Advance, after all. It's actually kind of funny when Nintendo doesn't quite hit the right notes for a game. I still have plenty of respect for the company. But when I didn't like how Blizzard handled StarCraft 2, or BioWare botched the end of Mass Effect, I lost a lot of faith in those two companies. It's an almost unconscious thing that Nintendo has permission to occasionally screw up. Why is it that the music here somehow feels more ominous than it did for me when we were pretty damn close to the Metroid Queen, who should have been the most ominous thing on the planet? And why is it that the difference between the enemies in the final area and the ones closer to where we started doesn't feel all that major to me outside of just sheer durability? Okay, what was even the point of those crystals if they weren't even blocking something off? Right. Never mind the spider ball, we'll just screw attack our way up. Should I be worried that the sky is green for some reason?